Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and to this edition a day earlier this week because we've got some guests coming, so get the video out of the way first. This edition, which really concentrates on the building of the scrapyard more than anything else. There are one or two other things in, a bit more of painting figures and some items to go with the engine shed once it's built. But the thing that I've spent most of the week working around has been working on the scrapyard. So let's go back a few days to when I started work on creating the first half of the scrapyard. This will be a short section as I work on the scenic work around the scrapyard. I'm going to be doing the work from this end all the way up and under the arch until about here. I'm not carrying on beyond here, all around this area, because the final positioning of the fence and the entrance to the scrapyard is partly dependent on how I blend in from high Elven up here down and onto the baseboard. I know if I come back a little way, I know that I will be bringing the fascia right the way down here to join the front of the baseboard, but obviously the harder part is how it works around there. I have something coming which may help me, but that may not get into this video, and I certainly won't be working on it in this video. So the first thing that I've done is to create a paper mache hill at this end, because I want all of this end to be overgrown. And I've got a little plant which you will always find in any overgrown area, so see if you can guess what that is. You'll see it a bit later. And then I want to fill in all of this area with various bits of scrap. And you saw some of it before, but I also want to try and have a go at doing something a bit like Chris did. I mean, this is the one that Chris Inge sent me from Wheezy Palace Models. I think that's his new channel's name. As a scrapyard, all made of bits and pieces that were around, which I think works really well. So that's going to be one of them, and I've got loads of bits and pieces which I'm going to want to use to help create the scrapyard. So we'll get the thing up as far as here, and then we'll see what we do around this area. Oops, come out a bit, around this area a bit later. So I'm just about to cover this area here in earth. I'd put this sort of tarmac down, which was probably the wrong thing, but I actually want to cover it all in earth up to about here, which is what I'm going to do now. I've got some Woodland Scenics Fine Earth, I think it's called, so I'm going to put that down because I want something darker than the light grey. So I'll come back when I've got all that finished and have started the work, I think, of starting to put some bushes and goodness knows what else in place. As you can see, the Woodland Scenics soil went down yesterday. It's dried now, so now what I'm proposing to do is to start doing some of the scenic work to turn the top end into really a bit of a jungle, and to place, see if those of you who were listening earlier, a new acquisition for me. I don't know if you can see these. You won't because I haven't got them in the focus. There we go. Just take that off. There we go. These little buddleia. Wherever you see waste ground, you'll nearly always see buddleia. So I'm going to put some of those up at that top end because they've not been got to for a while. What I'm proposing to do is to try and record myself as I do the scenic work. And I will probably do a voiceover a bit later saying what I'm doing rather than try and talk as I go along, because it's probably better if I speed this up a little. We'll see. So what I'm going to do now is just reposition a few things, and then we'll be able to get on with starting the scenic work. Oh no, I'd forgotten. One of the things I've done already is to get this stuff ready. You've seen this before. This is rubberized horsehair. A few squirts with the hairspray, and then that's gone over with some Gauge Master leaf, I think. Let's see if we can get, there we go. First some light and then some dark. And what I will do with that is tease it out a bit to give me sort of brambly looking, I hope, as well, so that we've got a mix of things going on in that corner as it comes down this slope, and probably bringing the scruffy area down to about here somewhere. So let's just get the microphone off and then we can get on with some work. So I wanted to start by doing some scenic grass work on the area of the hill as it comes down. And I was going to use a mixture of 4mm patchy grass and summer grass to do the static grass at this area. So in the time-honoured way, I started off by making use of the Pico's scenic product, the basing glue, which is fairly straightforward, and that just gets applied and then using a paintbrush to spread it out in the areas where I want the static grass to stick, which was certainly down the whole of the hillside, and then bringing it down a little way on either side by the walls, just to provide a little bit of grass in that area, which the scrap is going to go over the top. Having completed that, I then started work using the applicator in the usual way. So this has got the grass inside, and I was doing okay, but I was thinking that this really wasn't coming out as well as it should, and you can see that I'm working quite hard to get the static grass to come out at this point, and finding that it really wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. I was working really very hard to get the static grass to come out, so I needed to use something else, which is a tried and tested alternative, because what I discovered as I was trying to make use of the static grass applicator is that the grass inside had formed into clumps like this. Now I suspect the problem is that I need perhaps a slightly bigger applicator for 4mm grass. I'd be interested if anybody else has had this problem. But obviously once it's clumped together like this, there's no way it's coming out through the gauze on the applicator. So as I said, I turned to my trusty alternative, which is a really high-tech product, and that is the puffer bottle. Now this one's made by, or at least has the Hornby trademark on it. In fact, I think they're all a Knock product, and it's Knock that then license it to lots of other people, because I've certainly seen Hornby with this on it. I think I've seen another one, certainly Gauge Master I think also sell this product. Costs about £5 or £6. Really good for doing small areas. I wouldn't want to try and do a big area with this. And also to be able to direct stuff by using it as a puffer bottle rather than just as a kind of shaking bottle. You can actually sort of get it out, and you just shake it up and down to create the static charge in the grass inside, and then use it to apply what you need to do. And here you see it being used for that purpose on the grass where I couldn't quite get it to go. And you can see that it's coming out, and then I actually did a bit of squirting just to make sure it all came out where I wanted it to do. And that worked an absolute treat, and it gave me the coverage that I wanted. And once I'd completed that, it was time really to start having a bit of a tidy up, and to get with this little Hoover or vacuum cleaner. It's meant, I think, for computer keyboards, but it works an absolute treat, not least because the front section comes off, and that's where all the stuff gets collected into it. So it means I don't have to keep raiding my wife's tight drawer for use on a bigger Hoover, and the power of that Hoover is just about right. I then moved on to doing the scenic work with the horsehair. I think this is a brilliant product because you can pull it apart, and as you can see, it doesn't just disintegrate because of the rubberized nature, and you can fashion it into whatever you want it to be. The first part went on at the top. There was still some basing glue that I could see up there, so I didn't need to put any glue there. The next part was fashioned into the shape that I wanted it to be, and that from there I was then able to just pop a bit of glue on the bottom of it and fix it into position. once I'd shaped it to where I wanted it, it was just a case of a few bits of glue on the bottom, and in it went. And as you can see here, the grass is forming a base. And most of it, actually, by the end of it, as you'll see, isn't visible. So once we'd got the horsehair in to provide me the sort of brambly undergrowth, I then wanted to put a bit more on, and so this is the standard thing for me, which is a mixture of mid-green, light green and olive underbrush, which I then, in the time-honoured way, mix into a sausage shape, like that, and then apply glue to the length of the sausage. And I find as you put it in position, it disintegrates. And in fact, this disintegrated and stuck to my fingers. But what that means is that it breaks up in a kind of natural way. So I find it much less in the way of placing than you just let nature do whatever it wants to do with the stuff. And I think that gives a more natural look than if you try and arrange it in a particular way. So a bit more work on the underbrush. And we are getting close to being able to use the buddleia for the first time. So once that was all in place, it was time to start putting in the buddleias in place. Here you can see one of them. This is one of the lilac ones. There's 5 lilac and 5 white in each packet. So the first of the lilac ones went in towards the top at the back. I was happy with that. I wasn't going to put too many in, but I did want some. And then I wanted to put another lilac one about 3/4 of the way down. And the final one was to put in place the white one, which went down towards the front. They've got a wire base on them, so if you've got a fairly soft area, you could actually stick them in. These were going into where all the bush and the rest was, so they were sticking to that quite happily. But they would go into a paper mache or a foam base if you were using them, and stand upright quite well. And this gave me the completed scene. This is what I wanted, an overgrown area with a few buddleia plants, a little bit of grass coming down from the front. The only thing I didn't film, because I forgot all about it, was to do the final bit, which is to use a very weak mix, 50-50 PPA and water with a little bit of washing up liquid. Gave this a quick spritz with some water and then covered it in that mixture, which soaks down and in and holds everything together, I find, and saves bits from dropping off. And that was really how I completed this area of scenic work. I thought as a piece of light relief I'd just show you something that I've been doing mainly of an evening and in short bursts, which is painting up these prizer figures. They come, I think, 60 or 70 in a packet unpainted. And I've had them in the drawer, and I keep looking at them and think I really must get on and paint them. So I've actually started the work of painting them. They are small, of course. If I bring this in, there we go, and put my thumb next to it, you can get an idea of the size. They're 1:160. I really don't think that makes much difference when you put it on the layout. Not least because I've got a strong suspicion a lot of the Bachmann Farish figures are 1:160. And, from a distance, I defy you to be able to say that that is a 1:160 figure rather than a 1:148. I do enjoy doing this, although it really is a labour of love. It takes a long while, it seems, before things really start coming together. Some of them are better painted than others. None of them yet have their shoes done. The order in which I tend to do things is first of all go through and do the flesh areas, and then I go on and paint the clothes. I do the shoes last of all in terms of clothing, and then I go back and touch up the flesh tones, because it's not uncommon for that to get a bit caught with other things. But having the flesh tones in place at the beginning really helps you to see where the clothing comes to. And last of all, they'll be taken off the sprue and I will paint their heads, because I need them on the sprue at this point. And if I painted their heads now, when I cut them off the sprue, they'd each one of them have a little white dot in the middle of it, which is not what I want at all. So some of them are getting their shoes. Some are more complete than the others. This one is certainly more complete. And I've had fun doing these. I do enjoy it. Haute couture has become a thing for me as well. You know, what colour would you go with that? Does this go with that? Do I care? But so that's taken a bit of a time. The thing at the back, the colours at the back are the colours that I have used already in doing these models. I think one of the things is not to have too much of one colour, because otherwise everything looks the same. And the colours that you see to the right are the ones that have yet to be used. And it's possible I may break out some of the other variations on a theme that I've got still in the colour drawer. So it does help to have a good mix of colours, because there are at least 2 blues that are in front of you. There are actually 3, I think. And it does help, I find, to do it that way. And as does the ever and all important, if I try and do this without breaking everything in the Happy Home, the headset. I could do it without that. I'm not sure I'd want to. I find I can usually go for about 45 minutes painting, and then I have to take a break because it's such concentrated work. But once these are finished, which may not be this week, I think, so I've still got a bit to do. Probably in the next video, I'll show you them on the layout once they've gone in. And I think the layout, I mean, I've got, what, 20 or 30 to do here. The layout will just swallow them. I think you'll probably struggle to see them, which does make you realise just how many figures you would need to be able to be seen. So I've got plenty of painting ahead of me over the next few years. So having looked at that, I want also to show you, which I'll come back to a bit later in the video, some of the things that I bought for the engine shed that will actually go inside the engine shed or to adorn the engine shed. So we'll come back to the desk after the next stage in completing the work on the scrapyard. We've moved on a few days from the last time you saw this. I've allowed everything to dry and all the glues dried that I mentioned I'd put on. And I'm starting to put on the pieces of scrap to decide where I want them to go. Now if I move in a little, you'll see there's a piece of an old lorry, the frame of it, the chassis. There's the 2 piles of scrap which I weathered up before. There's the one from Chris, which he very kindly sent me. And I want to learn from that in making some more scrap to go in. So I had a go myself at something, which are these 2 things here, if I bring them into camera. And what I've used is lots of old parts of white metal kits that I have knocking around, really. We are sorry to interrupt this broadcast. We feel, however, that it is important to let you know that owing to a fit of stupidity on the part of our presenter, he omitted to inform you that having placed the white metal pieces in each container, he then flooded each container with rocket card glue and set both aside to dry. This took about 36 hours, by which time the glue had dried clear, leaving all the pieces firmly stuck within. Armed with this vital piece of information, you are now better placed to make sense of his witterings. We now return you to the programme. I painted up these were old lorry bodies, which I kept promising myself I was going to build the lorries, and I knew I never was. So instead they're forming things just to hold the scrap in. And I put the other white metal parts. I don't know if you can actually see with this one. No, you can't. I had lots of little white metal people, which again I was going to paint, and I know I never will. So there's hundreds of little white bodies underneath there. But I put that in, and then I used a weak wash of the weathering rust powder first of all, and then went over with some heavy just the weathering powder once it had all dried, and then a bit of smoke as well. And I'm quite pleased with how they've come out, because some of the white metal is showing through, but equally a lot of rust is. So that's coming out really quite pleasingly. And I want to find somewhere where I'll put those on the layout at the other end. You can see, if I keep out the light, what's here at the moment. There's some old fence there, there's Chris's and the other ones. The only thing is, they do look as though they've just been plonked on there. So I think what I'm going to do is put some bushes in around and a bit of static grass in there around them. Because I think I just want to make them look as though they've not just been plonked there, that they've been there a while. So I'm going to go away and do that work. I won't film that bit of work, and I'll come back when I finish that work so you can see what the end result is. Let's hope it's a good one. So I'll see you when I come back from doing that. Now that we're getting to the point with the engine shed where I can start work on the roof, although this week has been largely spent doing other things, I've purchased a few weeks ago quite a few things to go inside, and I thought I'd share them with you, because I know, I found these, and these are rather useful little things, and others may want to use them for their layouts. The first of these is the newest, which arrived only this morning, which is from PD Models, which, as you know, I use up in Orkney. I think, actually, to be fair, they're now going under the name of Model Railway Features, I think, because he's done so well that he's been able to diversify into different things. This kit is the blacksmith's kit. This comes unpainted, in case you wonder why it's this red little thing. The red little thing is actually a little anvil inserted into the top of a block of wood. If I can bring it up here, you can see it. Tiny, tiny little thing. And obviously, once I've painted that up, then you'll be able to see the difference between the wood at the bottom and the anvil sitting on top. And then these various types of benches for use. Well, we'll put it into a blacksmith shop, presumably, but there were blacksmiths without question that were working in the railway. Turning now to the other ones, these are kits from DM Toys, which I'm sure some of you will have come across before. Based in Germany, no problems having stuff shipped. It was shipped pretty quickly, really, all things considered, and at a price that I thought was pretty reasonable. But it's a really good range of things they've got for on an industrial side of things, and they even actually have quite a bit of furniture, which I find the devil's own job to secure, that looks anything like good. And I suspect these are all 3D printed either for them or by them. So we've got two of the cabinets here. That's one kit. This is another kit, which is a large chest of tools and some kind of device, possibly a lathe, but I'm not entirely sure, and it's too small to be certain. A set of different equipment here. There's a drill here, there's a generator and a barrel. This is still attached to the spigot on which it comes, which I suspect they send to try and help protect them in the post. But you just take that off, and then it will all stand as it should. I've got a workbench here. I've actually bought two of those, but there's no point showing you two of the same thing. And then finally a set of 3 tools, which look for a woodwork shop principally. That's a drill, that would be a circular saw, and that I think is a bandsaw. It's quite a vicious looking thing. Anyway, so I bought those thinking, oh, that will fill up quite happily. And I have a slight suspicion that the engine shed is going to swallow these and you may not notice them, in which case I'll just have to get some more. But I thought I would share this with you because I think these look really good, and if you haven't had a look, go and have a look at DM Toys. I'll put a link in the description below to help you to go and find it after you've watched the video. The only two other things which I bought, which are to adorn the outside of the shed, one of them you've seen before, this safety ladder, because I used that on the fire station. It's a really good kit. It requires to be soldered together. I don't think I would try and do this using super glue. It just looks better once you do it. And when I come to make this, I've got a feeling I may have shown it when I built the fire station. When I come to make this, I will show you how I make this, because you have to bend the cage first of all, and then attach it with some solder, and then obviously paint it up. But that will give the safety ladder going up onto the roof. And then between the two canopies, as the roof slopes down into the V in the center, it has always been my intention to put a walkway. And this is the one that I'm likely to be using again from PD Models. By the looks of it, you just have to bend those bars up, and then obviously create it to the size that I want. So I got two of them to make sure I've got long enough to be able to do the whole length. And that will be a walkway then through the center of the two canopies to provide access. So I need to think a bit about how I'm going to do all that so that there will be access points coming off, which will be yet one more thing to think about. But that's adorning it once I get round to actually building the roof. Right, that's enough on this. Let's go now to do the final section, looking at the work of creating the first part of the scrapyard. Well, we're now the following day, and I did pretty much what I said I would do. The way in which I went about it, I first of all covered some of the area, most of it, but not entirely all, in PVA. Stuck the pieces of scrap into position, and then using the puffer bottle with some long static grass, directed the static grass roughly where I wanted it to be. And I'm pleased with how that's come out. Now, you're a little way away, because when I tried to film this leaning over, it was it was so shaky that it would have caused immediate nausea. So I'm staying a little further away. One of the things I have got to do is to get my new gimbal. I bought a new gimbal. I think it's called a Zhenju, I think. But I really do need to get back to grips with it. I haven't used it for a good long while. One of the good things is that Filmic Pro, which I'm using to film this on the camera, can control that gimbal. So I don't need to use a separate piece of software to do that. So I promise, get hold of how to use that, and then I'll be able to get much closer shots as I used to be able to do. But I'm pleased with the way this has come out. It has the look of being overgrown. It probably needs more work, but I'm not going to touch it for a moment. Just leave it and see what I think and see what strikes my eye, and then I can go back in and do a bit more. And I do have, if I come down here, of course, I've got all this area at the bottom, all of this, put my hand in, around here. And it's amazing how much that has swallowed all the things that I've put in there in what is a relatively small space. And you could still take plenty more. So I've got to find more things to use by way of scrap in the scrapyard when I come to complete the work on doing it in a little while's time. That's not going to be immediate. But that really completes the work of doing the scrapyard, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's made a nice change from being bent over my desk working out how to build a roof, but that will be the thing that I'll need to turn my attention back to now for the next couple of weeks. And with that, I think we're pretty much reached the end of the video, so let's just move around to see some trains running and then wrap the video up. Well, I hope you enjoyed that running session of these locomotives running. The one running in front of you is a new acquisition. I wasn't intending to buy it, but it was on eBay for a good price, and it's an A3, a Dapol A3 Gladiator, which I don't think has been in their catalogue for a little while. Flying Scotsman is sitting on the turntable, and Colorado, my third A3, is in charge of the Grizzly Teaks that are going round. And that pretty much brings this edition of Elvenhome to an end. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, well, please do. It would be great to have you along. And if you've got any comments are the thing that really help sustain me and keep me going and give me so many ideas. Please do let me have your comments, and I'll look forward to getting them. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's goodbye from me. Bye-bye.